sync you up. Okay, ready to go, boys?
Was that the call to action? Are we?
Yeah,
are we
you're
ready?
ready, so you can start.
Okay. The old intro. Pieter, you see, I have to admit myself and Daniel are extremely excited for this conversation. Guys, we're here in a beautiful part of our country, the Lowveld. And we're sitting with a gentleman today that is extremely inspirational. So Pieter, I have to admit, when I had a look at your TikTok account, and I saw your handle, I am difference maker. I mean, I think that in a sense actually says it all, right? And your explanation regarding the fact that you're all about hope, and helping people or encouraging people to actually realize their potential. And I think ultimately that's definitely going to be what, the topical focus for our discussion today. So welcome to Greater Talks. I think myself and Daniel we feel privileged to actually have this chat. So with that being said, I think we're going to get right into it. When we had our pre-shoot conversation, you were sharing a bit about your story, and I'd like you to maybe just start off there. You're a pretty humble guy, right? But for the audience, I just want to say this: Pieter used to weigh 124 kgs. I'm not going to share his current weight, but he's a proper trail runner, athlete, turned his life around. So yeah, Pieter, I mean, if you could start us off just on your journey and where it all started, and your change of heart.
As I said, I'm not going to share my whole
story. Yeah, sure.
Because I think time is not on our side.
Yeah.
But it all came to a decision that I made. I was standing in front of the mirror and looking at myself and evaluating myself and thinking, is this where I should be? With I'm going to say Miles Monroe's words that the richest place on earth is the graveyard, because there lies all the untapped potential. And with those words, I was actually looking at weighing myself as to where I was and where can I be. And I found myself being far from where I think or I thought I could be. So yeah, I just started on the journey and listened to people. Started reading a few self-help books and just building on myself so that I can be a better person to serve other people. Because in the end, I believe that we are here to serve.
Yes.
Not serve ourselves, but serve each other. So yeah, that's...
Listen, I mean, that's, to be honest, you say it very lightly, right? But the thing that gets me is it's a big deal to sort of stand and look yourself in the mirror and actually get to the point where you make the decision or come to the realization that, well, there's a few things. I want to be better, right? That's sort of the first thing that you mentioned. And then the second thing is, and I assume this, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the assumption that I used to live just for myself, and now I actually want to start serving others and sort of become valuable towards others, right? And so the question being, how did you get yourself to the point where you were able to actually commit to that? Because, it's not easy to change in that manner. I mean, that's a huge change in lifestyle. It's a huge change in thinking. It's a huge change in discipline, right? So was it a journey? Was it an instant thing?
No, it was definitely a journey. Definitely a journey. And it still is. I mean, I used to smoke. Just an example is, somebody said, yeah, but it's easy for you. You just left. Just stop.
Yeah, you just quit.
And I said, no, it isn't. It's every day the choice. If I go into a shop and buy a cool drink, there's a whole rack of cigarettes. And I have to, and I can buy myself a pack easily. I mean,
yes.
But it's a choice not to. Yeah. So every day is that choice.
I hear you.
And I've got a thing that I'll never give somebody advice. But the only advice that I would give somebody is to find yourself a rock and give yourself some time on that rock. To be honest with yourself. Because if you're, what's the saying is, if you say yes to everything, your no doesn't mean a thing. And do you really want to lie to yourself? I mean, it's the easiest thing on earth is to lie to yourself. And I don't want to. I mean,
Just like it, but I mean that's so simplistic. Find yourself a rock.
yeah,
Like honestly,
Go
can
sit
we
a little
maybe
bit on
make
the
that
rock
the
and
episode's
reflect a
name?
bit.
That's
Yeah.
next level.
yeah, it's that easy, but nobody does it.
Yeah.
Well, it's that
It's
easy and that hard,
because-
right?
And it's what we say always. It's the thing is people want to get into the habit. So you were obviously in 34 years you were in a habit and you were drifting towards something.
Yeah.
And that picture that you saw and reflecting back to your family, looking at your family, that was the time.
Exactly. I mean,
So that was the trigger
yeah,
for you deciding that something need to change.
exactly.
If it's
Yeah,
starting with one thing, because you didn't just start running the next morning,
yeah.
but it was one decision that changed and led to the next one, led to the next one.
So I want to bring in something. I've done hard things in my life. I mean, we talked about Skyrun and the one thing that was the hardest thing for me to do was to wash my wife's feet.
Yes.
Okay, so I used to be very angry. My friend, I mean Joe, used to say that you don't get angry, you are angry. Okay? So, and
You
that
wake up
obviously-
angry.
yeah. Obviously, when I got home, everybody scattered because they didn't know in what mood I was.
My God.
Okay, so and my wife obviously got the most of the hardness,
Yeah, the toughest part
the
of it.
toughest part of that. So I realized that, and my two little boys at that stage, I realized that I change. If I want to make the change happen, I have to start with them.
Sure.
So I took a little bucket and a bit of water and I went to them and I just asked them, can I wash your feet? I didn't think much of it, but when I knelt down and did it, I mean that was, thinking back, still the hardest thing I had to do. And that changed a lot. I mean, that changed the perspective of my wife seeing me as, okay,
Oh, humbling.
change is real. You know, you didn't just say it, it's going to be like. And just from then on, I went to my rock each day and worked on. I obviously saw where I was, where I wanted to go, and it's a roadmap.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a thing that just happens. It's working on that road towards the ideal from
Yes.
where you are. So and that happens on the rock. You think about that 4 o'clock in the morning for an hour or so, and then you go and do it that day.
Yes.
Take
Listen,
it
it's-
day by day.
Yeah,
That's the
exactly
thing.
that.
It's usually when we, especially on that things, people that need to make like hard decisions, they usually want to like look at 10 years from now, 5 years from now. The thing is, you don't have 5 years from now. We only have this hour today. You almost guaranteed that we're gonna, be able to walk today. But
Yeah.
that's why the word also says you get sufficient grace day by day. So to focus on the day and look at, and that's super important what you said about being on the rock, to make that decision and to go for that change for that day. And then tomorrow it's the next day.
Yeah.
Don't worry today about the issues that you need to go through
Yes.
tomorrow.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
exactly that. I mean, the other thing is with training. The one day I came home late and I had to do a 45-minute fart laps. And it was pouring with rain in Dalstroom and lightning and I went into my room, I put my stuff on. My wife was like, where you going? I said, I have to do it. It's part of the training. But what about the lightning? if it's in the plan, it's in the plan. You know? So
That's the day. That's what you got today.
that's what I have to do now. And I mean, you just stick to it because it's so easy, and I see it so much. It's so easy to get excuses.
Well, that's the habit, and that's the easy way out.
Exactly.
But
I want to quickly just want to say something, Stefan. My father always taught me something. I always have this thing of my father taught me something. He really taught me a lot of things. But he said to me that in business specifically now, but in life as well, if the difficult decisions are usually the right decisions. The easy decisions is the one that most people make, and that's the wrong decision. Take the difficult side. That's the right one.
Yeah.
And deep down, you'll know.
Well, and I'm in case in point, but I think we all agree your father is sort of wisdom incarnated, with all due respect. I mean, he's walked a journey, but that's exactly what he did, right? And I mean, it's actually slightly emotional, It's a big deal because, and this is my question on that, because what would you say to people, just taking it back to where you actually got to the point where you said, listen, I'm going to now go back to my family. I don't want to be this tough guy, guy that's constantly kwaad vir die wêreld. What would you say to people in terms of people that realize that, because I think a lot of people come to the realization that they want to change or need to change. It's really hard. Right? So what would you say to people to actually just get them to take that first step? Because you obviously took it, and you took a big step, because it wasn't just thought and then and then you went and go and sat on a rock. You actually went to your family. I mean, you sort of made it public, and that's pressure, right?
See, the one thing I always tell everybody, because part of my testimony is saying things like the word, and people are like, "But how can you say that?" It's because I am difference maker. It's not me. The one who made me is the difference maker. Okay, so what can people do to you when you say the hard things? The only thing they can do is take it and use it for themselves. Because nobody wants to say the hard things. Nobody wants to say the things that actually hurt them. Because they're going to think, mense vind ek sag. What are people going to think?
Well, it's that humbling. It's that ability to be humble in front of the people that you were this hard, flippin' bomb.
Yeah, because you postured this preconceived idea of this is who I am for all of these years, right? And I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but what I understand from it, I mean, you were a big lad. So that is, I mean, people knew, And now you need to actually reconcile that with, I'm not this guy, and I don't want to be this guy for the rest of my life.
Exactly. The people I worked with on sites, I mean, when that change happened, I could see people suddenly approaching me where they weren't, or they didn't want to approach me. Previous to that. But then I realized,
well, there was not stability. That's why they never knew what's going to be let out. This
exactly. Is it going to be nice? Is he going to shout and be rude or whatever?
Yes.
Or is he actually going to see us? And I think that's the main thing about people is seeing each other. The one thing that I learned from my coach, who I think very highly of. When we were talking, he told me something. He said, you must remember one thing. Even though you want to help everybody, you can never fix someone else. You cannot do that. But you can listen. You can see them. You can be with them. You can never fix them. And that, I did a lot of street
ministry.
No, not. I just went and sit with people.
Oh,
I just wanted to listen to why are they there. In Pretoria, the Middelstad, it's chaos. I mean, I sat there with guys with needles in their arms, you know, talking to them 1 minute they're away.
Next
you know,
minute
and I'm
they're
like,
gone.
Okay. But I realized something, all of them, and I can say this because I was there for 3 years, every Wednesday and Thursday night. Everybody that's there is there because they gave up on life, because life gave up on them. People gave up on them. That's the sad truth about people being there. Actually, most of them want to.
So, and hope. There was no more hope.
Exactly. Because there's no more hope because nobody sees me. There's this old lady
Yes.
that I used to go to her every first time. You know, when I go out, I'd go to her first. And she once told me that why do the church always want to introduce us meaning street people, to God? I said, no, I don't know. I don't know. She said, because don't you think that somebody that can sit still so that the wild pigeons, birds, eat the crumbs from your jersey knows God? I said, yeah, I don't think about that. She said, I'm here because I gave up on people. Because she got hurt and. But she never gave up
On God.
on God because she knew
Yeah.
God.
Listen,
So,
I'm slightly moved, to be honest, and a million questions, honestly. So don't know how we're going to get this into an hour. But what I want to ask is, you said something. You said we need to just see each other. And you said it, and I thought to myself, Kate, you know, that's you just brushed over it so politely. If we can just see each other, and then you followed up now with this story with you actually going into Pretoria, into the city centre for 3 years, twice a week, and sat with homeless people. Did you really do that?
no.
My goodness, and why? Honestly, and I mean, I don't want to, I'm putting you on the spot, but why? It's a big deal. I mean, if I now need to say, I'm going to make this commitment, I want to see people, I want to understand a couple of things in life, right? Tough commitment to make and say, listen, I'm not going to go to city centre and sit with homeless people and actually just see them. Why?
Okay, I heard a story once. I was struggling with something. Okay, me and my father, we weren't that close to each other. You know, a lot of stuff happened and whatnot. But the guy said that, what's that? Eer your father and your mother. What's that?
So
Honor your father and
Honor
your mother, right?
your mother.
Yes, and you'll have a long life.
So I was struggling a bit with that because of the relationship that me and my father didn't have. And he said that you have to take what's it? Stackment.
strong.
A good quality that
Yeah,
your father
Yes.
has and go and live it out.
Okay.
And then you'll see what happens. I was like, okay. And I knew my father had a good heart. He never missed a street person. He always bought everything from them. They conned him and
You almost got irritated by the fact that you can see they con him, but he will still
but he was
be a
still,
loving heart.
Yes, exactly.
He
So-
saw people.
Or he will take them in, bring them home, they'd work for him, and things would go south.
Yeah.
But I went there, and you know, the third week, the guy asked me the question that guy said they will ask me. And he said, the one guy asked me, was your pa dominee?
Yeah.
Was your father a pastor? And I'm like, no, he wasn't. But I realized then,
Yeah.
that's how I honor him. Not because of the things that he did, that I think he did wrong.
Ek verstaan.
Because he was also just hurt.
Mm.
I mean, he did the best with what he could. And that made me realize that when we see each other as God sees us, you see a total different person.
I hear
Or
you.
you look for the qualities then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I mean the impurities are on everybody.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it's easy to look at that.
So if you want to see that, if you want to just look at that, it's not too hard to
Yeah,
spot.
it's like just letting yourself go. It's the easiest thing in the world.
Mm.
But the tough thing is to look at the other side.
Yeah.
The side that you have to build on.
Yeah.
You have to make the tough choices.
Mm.
I mean, that's the
Well, it's a huge perspective shift, right? Makes me think of always. There was a childhood movie that I loved, The Prince of Egypt, and there's a portion in the movie where Moses obviously he kills the guy in Egypt, and then he runs into the desert, right? And the song gets sung by is it Miriam, right? Who he marries, I think so. And the father sings the song, "How can you judge what a man is worth if you look through the eyes of a man? You must look through heaven's eyes." And what you just said really made me think about that, because it's a big deal. You know, we get, especially in South Africa, we get so caught up in just judging people and having, not necessarily unforgiving hearts, right? But our perspective is really messed up. And you hear something like this, which you just explained, you know, having a perspective shift and then putting action to thought, right? I mean, you mentioned this now. You wanted to honor your father by looking for some good quality in him and then going into the world and living that out. I mean, we shouldn't miss that. That's a big deal. That's really a big deal. And I mean, I applaud you for that, really, because I mean, obviously you went through some stuff, and that's a real big move. And I'm sure that you changed as an individual while sitting with those homeless people, because initially, it's so easy to judge them. You're on the street, you're worth nothing. No, I don't want to say you're worth nothing, but how can you be on the street, you know? How can you not go and try and do something, right? But then you got a perspective shift. You're looking at them through heaven's eyes, right? How did you change, would you say, sitting with those people?
I can tell you a lot of stories from there. The one thing is that I saw in, let's call it normal people, is whilst I was sitting with them, people would walk past, they won't even see you. They don't see you. I mean, the one time I was sitting there, I mean, and I didn't look homeless. And the guys came and stopped quickly and, you know, dealt out food parcels. They even gave me one. And I was like, serious, sien julle my nie?
My goodness.
So, and I realized it's just
that's
you stop
habit.
there with a car, you just pass out, says, yeah, and then you go. I mean, that's not how and those people, that as we progressed in our friendship, they actually, when the food parcel stopped, they didn't even go there anymore. Because just sitting there, and I never gave them one cent.
But the loyalty you got back is on a different level.
Exactly. I never gave them nothing. The fact that I just visited them and sat with them and just talked about their lives and what's going on and why they are there and meant so much for me. So that's what it's about. It's not, I mean, trying to fix is a perspective that I don't know where it came from, but people trying to fix other people, it doesn't work.
Well, if you're broken, how do
Because
you?
if you don't go through that one decision that you made, that picture that you had that day, and that decision you made to have the shift, if you don't make that hard decision, it will not change. And that's something, and I agree 100% with what you say, is people need to, that's why people want to change other people, because they see the potential in them. But the issue is that person needs to make that decision themselves. Otherwise, it's just draining on actually everybody.
Exactly.
So there's one, and the last story I want to share is, you always think that if you give that guy what you have, he'd be alright.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's one guy, he used to dop a lot. So I got him one day, and we could talk.
A little bit, yeah.
And I asked him, what would you do if I give you R1 million? He was like, serious, you. En ek sê ja, wat sê jy doen? Ek sê maar jy moet my eerlik. So the one thing that I was with them is we have to be honest.
Ja.
With us.
Truth.
No
Ja.
stories.
Ja.
We have
Ja,
to
ja.
be 100%
Ja, ja, ja.
honest.
Ja, ja.
Okay. So he was thinking and I said jy moet eerlik wees. And he said, you know what? If you give me $1 million now, I'll be dead tomorrow.
Wow.
Ek sê hoekom? Hy sê because I buy all Donnie's dog.
Sure.
You know? And I know he used to tell me that he only needs 24, I think it was 24 and 50 or something. Because Donnie had
Ja.
a certain dog that he sold.
Yes. 24.50 and he's
That's-
sorted.
That was
That's
his
his kick.
need for the day.
Yeah.
Yes.
And only if he got that and he got something to eat, he was sure.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm thinking quickly of, I made a TikTok video about, I was cleaning my yard and I got an old bro.
Yeah. Spectacles,
Glasses.
sunglasses.
So glass,
Ja, ja, ja.
with only one glass in the glass was cracked.
Ja.
And I just realized that this is how we see life.
Ja.
Each of us has his own
Mm.
you know,
Spectacles on.
set
Yeah.
of glasses. And the glasses are cracked.
Mm.
And that's how I see life.
Yes.
And the one problem there is me wanting to force what I see through my cracked lens on you,
Mm.
and not listening to how you see life through your cracked lens.
Mm.
So if we sit like this and talk about the cracked images that we see
Yeah.
and realize that this is how I see it, this is how you see it.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Mm.
I can share what I see and maybe it makes sense to you at some time.
Mm.
And with that, we can move forward. And we can change.
And I think the essence there is that you need to realize you look through a cracked lens.
Exactly. All of us.
Yeah.
Nobody has a perfect
Yeah.
set of glasses.
Listen, it's to the point, right? I think something that as I'm listening to you in the context in which you're speaking, something that really sort of, I'll say touches me is, guys in general, and I'll generalize a bit, we're pursuing things and we're pushing and we're driving, and it's, I don't want to say macho and testosterone and all of that stuff, but it's just in general, that's how guys are. But the way that you speak, and considering your journey, there's something to be said about an individual that had a change, that thing of having a heart of stone change to a heart of flesh. Actually coming to the realization that, listen, I've got a bit of a stony heart here. My outlook on life is it's bad. And actually getting that, I don't want to say softness, into you, but that sort of perspective
It's
that
humbleness that
it's
comes in.
humbleness. That's actually
Humbleness
that's
creeps
actually
in.
the point.
Otherwise, you would have never washed his wife's feet.
Yes.
That's the most humble experience you most probably went through.
Yeah, definitely.
My goodness.
And that's super important
Yes.
because that's the most difficult thing for a man to go through is that experience.
I agree. Well, I don't.
You see,
I agree.
talking about this shop quickly.
Yeah,
I started off with a few boxes of khakis,
yeah,
it was just after COVID, and we moved to Dalstroom. And my wife actually said that you love running and,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and why don't we?
yeah.
And I started, and the first pair of shoes that I helped to put on somebody's feet, I was kneeling.
Yes.
And I saw it immediately as I'm serving this one. And from then on, that's how I sold khakis. Serving on my knee, fastening the and that's taking into account that I can run 100 k's through being tough and being that macho testosterone.
Well, that's the let out part for you.
And being able to
Ja, nee,
you
ek
know,
verstaan.
verstaan, dit is hoe ek dit sien. That's how I see life.
Yes.
And I agree. That's something that I also try to like uplift to, and you can see that down spirit, and you can see the upliftment, because it comes down to I get a little bit recognized. Everybody just passes through, give my stuff, and when you just pay a little bit of attention, you can see this lady doesn't have a lacquer we had the situation yesterday with Ashley, where she were down, and me and Mike just lift her up, and in an instance, she were a different person.
Yeah.
But it comes down to that thing of it's the recognition.
Yeah.
Recognition.
Listen,
So Joe and his brother works a lot with this BTG, be that guy thing. And they've got a saying that high fives saves lives. And it comes down to me being high-spirited, me seeing somebody who's down and just saying, well done, buddy."
Well done.
That's all
Recognition.
Yes.
we need. We don't need fancy, we need to be recognized. And just a tap on the shoulder that says, yes, well done. You know,
Yeah.
that means much more than whatever you can
Well, and acknowledging that everyone's got a story.
do.
I mean, people aren't stupid. People
Yeah.
go through stuff, right? You alluded to it now, and I think this is. I actually wanted to ask this question earlier, but how big of a role does the ability to actually speak Sotho so well play in your life? Because I mean, it's really cool. I've watched a lot of your videos now, and it really is cool. I mean, we've spoken about this. We're humbled about it because the reality is, it's a big deal in South Africa. So yeah.
You see, I think being able to, I'm very glad that I speak Sotho much better than English.
That's so cool.
It's,
that
it's
to
a
be
good
really
country
honest.
to have that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the thing is, it's again coming back to not seeing only who I am or who my people are or whatever. It's
Yes.
recognizing and seeing other people.
Yes.
It's the ability to speak Sotho is just for me again something of respect. And I try to speak Zulu and the other languages as well. I tend to just fall back to Sotho because the other people, or most of them can understand Sotho, so they speak Zulu back. I understand them. But it's really something that that helps in all aspects of understanding each other.
I agree.
Because what I've realized is nobody wants to be stupid, or sound or look stupid. So when there's a barrier in language, if I, say for instance, when I was in England working on sites, that English slang I couldn't understand. But if somebody gives me instruction, I would say, okay, sure, I'll do it. Because I didn't want to say sorry. And then I do
But
it
then,
wrong.
and then they.
They come back to me, and then I get a hiding or whatever, and you know. So being able to speak Sotho just breaks that down.
And we spoke about it in one of our episodes.
Yeah, with Thabo.
With Thabo, yeah. And that's a super powerful thing. And that's where I really believe, because people sometimes miss it and they get frustrated with each other because of the language barrier. And because it is a thing. We spoke about that. He mentioned somebody that couldn't understand English well. And then there was a conversation that he had with the oak in Zulu. But it was Zulu. And the thing is, after that, he did understand the guy clear. He did understand the motives clear. But with his barrier, the language barrier issue, he came across totally different. And that is one of the things that we also believe is something in our country. And you are a good example of almost piercing that.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I wouldn't think it's a harsh statement, but there's something to be said about if you're in Africa / South Africa, rather than taking French, at school. Listen, rather take one of the African languages. To be really honest, I mean, it's actually, I'd go as far as to say it's slightly embarrassing. That all of us didn't do it.
Well, only at this point you realize the super importance of it.
Well, and there's still time to do something about it. So we need to really.
Thing is, and the reality. So my father can also speak fluently.
Yes.
And the reality is, how old were you when you learned it from boy? And the thing is, you will not pick up his slang towards the language, trying to learn the language now. And that's something that, well, he could hear in an instance if somebody could speak the language for you know, their whole life
Yeah.
or learned the language.
Yes.
And the thing is, that's why his slang come over and the internal stuff, because that it becomes a bit of a cultural thing as well,
Yeah, yeah.
because you understand the language,
Yes.
and that's where the communication are super transferring over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
The other thing is just, you know, trying.
Yeah,
Trying to
yeah,
means that
you care.
again
Yeah.
you acknowledge and see the other person.
Yeah,
So even if you try but you do it wrong,
yeah,
at least you try.
yeah,
You know, and that goes a long way. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, especially where we are
Yes.
in our country, and there's a lot of you know boiling pots
Yeah.
all around and
Yes.
stirring this side and stirring
Yeah,
that side.
yeah,
and,
yeah.
You know, so I think just trying is super important.
I agree, and as a general rule, I mean, South Africans are actually really inviting and
Yeah.
forgiving to that extent, because we, you know, it's,
And funny.
you feel that,
Yeah,
right?
we are super. Listen, if anything happens, South Africa within 30 minutes got some meme
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something towards anything, and look at the, you know,
And
the
Nando's will
joke.
make an ad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nando's in a couple of days will come out with an ad.
Exactly.
But we are a super, you know, not an emotional country, but we definitely are a funny and
We feel
we
one
like to
another.
laugh. That's
Exactly,
it's a
yeah,
big
and-
thing in the country
yeah.
across all nationalities.
Yeah, especially if you. I mean, I was going to make a TikTok video about this, but go to a car wash, okay? And I don't want to. Must think clearly before I do this, say this, but just go to a car wash and look at certain people. Some of them sits there like they're waiting for a jail sentence. You know, just want to get it over with.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
just
yeah,
want to
yeah.
get out of there.
Yeah.
And then when you look at the other side, it's a party.
Yeah.
There's cokes and everything's
Yeah,
being
yeah,
shared,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah.
laughter, and you know, it's. And I think to myself, yes, I'd rather sit there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather sit there and share a coke and have a laugh than sitting there not
Checking the clock,
not
they need to
making
finish.
eye contact, just want to finish this while they're taking so long. Am I, you know?
Yeah.
So small things like that 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 makes me realize listen, there's so much more in this country.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But people are afraid to try and you know to engage.
Yeah.
Breach the gap, breach the divide.
Exactly, because somebody's going to say something.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why. No, I mean I won't say I don't care, but I really don't. That doesn't affect me because I know why.
Well, you saw the power of doing it. I'm sure the first time you needed to go sit with somebody, it wasn't just walking up and it's 100%
My
fine with
goodness.
yourself.
No,
That
But
still
after
gets me
doing
though.
it consecutively, you realize what you get out of it.
Yeah, so after that, when I made the decision to change,
Yeah.
I went into there's a certain guy's books that I read, and I went into Kum books.
Okay.
I ordered books and they phoned me. They said the books are there. Me and my two sons and a friend of them went to Kum books. And as I came into the bookstore, there was a guy standing there, the tie and you know, dressed neatly. And when I passed him, I felt like I should give him a hug. I'm like, no way. And I moved. And I stood there and I was a bit in my car, you know, shaking. The next thing, that guy was standing again. He came to me straight and he said, "Sir, do you need to tell me something?"
Man, moes.
And I just no. What do you want? You know? And he said, "No, I don't want anything. I just felt led to come here because,
Yes.
you know." And he said to me, if it is you, can you just say my wife is waiting in the car?" I'm like, yeah. And I told him, "Listen, I felt when I passed you that I should give you a hug."
Yeah.
He said, "Can you just do it, please? I need to go with my wife." I'm like, this is weird, but anyway. And I was just like,
Yeah,
No,
you Daniel was, you
yeah,
just
yeah,
gave him
it's
a...
touch and go. You know? And
touch and go.
And he actually told me a story, you know, a piece out of the Bible. He said it was about bindings,
Yeah.
and he left. I was like, my kids were standing there looking at me like,
What's happening?
And 2 years after that, obviously I got used to this thing about when I hear that.
No, you just
when I
act. You
feel
don't
that, yeah,
wrestle
I
with
don't
it.
ask
Yeah.
questions, I just do
Yeah.
it.
Get it over with because it's gonna be a burden. So
Exactly.
just get it over with.
So we were in Zambia and we did an outreach or whatever. And there was this old guy. He was really old, and his suit. If you did this to it, it was like it's called, you know, trampolines. That
Oh yeah, the old it comes off.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah,
suit
yeah.
was like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
So,
The old suit.
yeah, and we were praying there, and I just felt that again. And I asked the interpreter to just ask me if it's alright if I give him a hug, and he said, yeah, it's fine. When I gave him a hug, that old Madonna started crying.
Wow.
So, and you know, actually
Yeah.
shaking crying. Everybody thought, oh, okay,
Yeah.
what's happening? And I asked him what happened, and he said it's the first time in his life that he realizes what love is.
Yes.
And that guy went out and showed us amazing stuff
Yeah.
that happened in water.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Okay.
So they told us stories and
Yes.
which would have never
Happened if that one act.
Then
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Listen.
So it's easy to quote. the Bible.
Yeah.
That's the easiest thing on earth, and that's why I stopped doing it. I just do.
You live it out.
I
It's
live
by
it out.
example. Yeah.
Exactly, because I realized that everybody can preach. Everybody can, you know, put a piece of scripture there, and I actually think that scripture loses
Its value as yeah.
the more bumper stickers there are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it becomes
Show
by
me
the
your
way.
faith by your works, right?
Exactly.
I think that's the essence of it, right? Why do you think is it so difficult to actually love on people, for lack of a better term? It's so much easier to be abrasive, right? To be, you know, the latter part. Why is it so difficult?
I think it's a selfish. Talking about myself.
Yeah.
Sure.
Before I made the decision, I was only thinking about what it would do to my image.
Yeah.
What would people think of me? You know, it was like, nou, jy was skielik somebody 'n drukkie gee.
Yeah.
Would they think I'm soft? Would they think I'm this or that? You know, so I'd rather not do it.
Yeah.
But now that I know, I mean, I know, the one thing that I know is we're all going to sit one day like this, having a chat with the one who created us. And we're going to have to answer a few questions.
Yeah.
And I realized that. And the more I live, the more I realize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how strong you are, how big you are, how what you are.
You're gonna be accountable one day.
Yes.
We are going to be accountable. We are going to sit down like this and have a discussion about the life you were given, the test you were given.
And it's going to be there for everybody to see. I like that. I often think about it, and the way that I think about it is you can either willfully bow your knee now or forcefully bow your knee later.
Or maybe
You choose.
both kneecaps on.
Yeah,
You're
you
gonna
decide.
bow. You will be on your knees.
But that's the thing. Thinking about, I mean, we're speaking about it now, but thinking about faith. I think a lot of people miss the word faith. No, I mean, I don't want to be quoted or anything, or, you know, but I think faith is really not just believing that there is somebody higher. Faith is living out the difficulties of life. That's
But believing God backs you.
exactly. That's, and I mean, it gets lost in translation very easy. because people would say, I'm faithful. What does it mean? No, I believe in God. Oh, okay. Show me your life. Ek is hierdie bang ouetjie in 'n hoekie en you know.
It's a 5 8.
So,
What role did forgiveness play in your journey? Was that too harsh?
I think forgiveness is so after washing my wife's feet, exactly a year after I gave that first guy a drink, he told me about the bindings. He was actually talking about that piece of scripture where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego was in the ovens, and the strongest men bound them. And as I was running, I was thinking about that story, and I realized myself as an 11-year-old boy
Yes.
standing in front of myself, and I realized that I have to say sorry, because when I was 11 I made the first what you call it, wrong choice, in my life.
The first pivotal one that,
And from there on it escalated into being the false self that I was at 24. Okay? And I stopped there and I realized, listen, now it's time to give that little boy a hug. There's no tyd om daai mannetjie te vergewe sodat jy kan aangaan met jou lewe. You know, I had to stop and acknowledge the fact that I was the one who made the wrong choices. And I had to forgive myself. And since that day, I was free.
My goodness.
Since that day, there's no boundaries. There's nothing holding me back, because I know that I forgave that little guy, and you know, we've got the rest of our life going forward.
It's crazy how these things happen, It's in everybody's journey and
Exactly. And I mean, his honesty, I mean, that's the thing, because so many people, and that's why I apologize for probing that question, but it's a big deal, because I mean, I think all of us, even us, we obviously getting older, and you get to the realization that people struggle. People struggle with these things, and the solution sometimes, more often than not, is actually quite simple, but very hard to do.
it is simple, but that's the thing, Stefan, where I really believe the humility factor plays such a big part, because it's a simple solution.
Exactly.
But there's something in the way, always.
Well,
to
ego,
get to a
right?
point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I applaud you on that. That is the point, right? Actually, the willingness to humble yourself. I've got a last question, because we are pushing it a bit, but just with regards to the running, because I mean, it's a big deal in your life. And how many sky runs have you run, Rad?
I've run all three of them, so 38 to 62 and the 100.
And the 100.
Yeah. And then I've done a lot of other ultras as well.
Yes. How much of that was because of you needing to sort of find yourself?
All of them.
All of it.
So I see my running as worship. So when I start to run, I just say thank you for the abilities that I have. And obviously there's a lot that goes through your mind, and I like to be alone, because I've learned that in those alone times is where I do the soul searching and all that. And properly listen to what God has to say to me. And that's why I like to, the longer the run, the better for me. So,
Yes.
The weaker you get, the more clear you can hear.
Yeah.
You know, so, and it's just the lifestyle that goes with it.
Yes.
I mean, I've never felt this good in my life. Waking up ready to go.
Yeah.
You know, there's no slump and no.
Ja, ek verstaan.
So dis lekker om gesond te wees. That's the added bonus to the running, and it's just inspiring people. You know,
To push themselves, to actually be willing to sort of go on that journey, the discipline and everything that goes with it.
and the one thing that people don't see is they always look at you at the end. You know, they see, oh yeah, you're so lucky. You run so, it's so easy for you. It comes
Yes.
so easy.
Yeah.
They didn't see the first 5K that I tried.
Listen,
to
from
run
120 kgs, I can think that it
Yeah.
wasn't that
without-
easy.
It wasn't.
Knees.
Yeah, it wasn't. Everything was, out of proportion and it wasn't right.
The rhythm.
Yes.
It didn't feel it.
Yes.
But
Yeah, yeah.
that's the times that people don't see.
Yes.
So those were the tough times.
No.
I hear you, and you push through that, right?
Yeah.
I think, Pieter, listen, I'm going to be dead honest. More power to you, brother.
Yeah, yes.
I think myself and Daniel will agree. We thank God for you, and thank you for your honesty. I think people shouldn't underestimate it. It's tough to speak about personal things, but I think there's a lot to be learned from your story and your testimony. And God bless you, brother. I think you've got a huge calling on your life, and we're excited to see what lies ahead. And to everybody out there in digital land, let's try and see people. Let's try and see people, and let's be willing to humble ourselves and make the changes that are necessary. Yeah, Dana, thank you guys.
That's it. Thanks.
Yeah,
guys.
that's,
Thanks.
that's
Like and
how I
subscribe. And I think a last thing for Pieter, maybe if you can just say something to your audience and our audience in your language.
So, skawali walang die conflict. Sal hy handle sharp.
Sharp, sharp.
Sharp, sharp.
That's right.
Nice.
Yes,
Well,